Mike Sando of The Athletic every year speaks to a whole host of NFL coaches and executives, 50 to be exact this time around. And he broke it down in the article that he wrote for The Athletic. 6 general managers, 8 head coaches, 10 talent evaluators, 12 coordinators, offensive and defensive, 6 quarterback coaches, and then some front office executives who work in the analytics department and cap management, and asked them to rank quarterbacks. The 35 veteran quarterbacks in the National Football League, veterans and young quarterbacks as well, and break them into 5 different tiers. And before we put them up, here are the 5 tiers. Tier 1, I'll go one at a time. There's tier 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. Tier 5 is backup. Tier 1 is they carry the team each week. The team wins because of this quarterback who expertly handles pure passing situations, and there are no real holes in their game. That was the metric by which these individuals were asked to rank the quarterbacks. And according to Mike Sando of The Athletic, here's what came back. There are 6 tier 1 quarterbacks, just 6 tier 1 quarterbacks in the National Football League. There they are. Aaron Rodgers ranked number 1, Mahomes 2, Tom Brady 3, God bless him, 3, Josh Allen 4, Justin Herbert 5, and Joe Burrow 6. Oh. Now then, here is my take on it. Congratulations to Herbert and Burrow playing themselves into this tier in the NFL. And, you know, I think Allen and Mahomes have proved it before. But here's Herbert and Burrow entering year 3, which is why the Chargers and the Bengals better come up with the scratch, because after this year is when they're going to go be knocking on the doors of the Spanos and Browns family, respectively, and say, did you see what Kyler got? And also, let me just say this one more time, in case y'all haven't heard what I've been saying this entire offseason since the Super Bowl ended. Joe Burrow is changing the Bengals organization. He has changed it. And anybody that overlooks the Bengals to repeat as AFC champions, certainly AFC North champions, anybody who overlooks, I don't know, Chris, if this is still the case, and maybe it is because you first brought it up in mid-March before Deshaun Watson joined the Browns, and we still, as of this current moment, do not know how many games Watson is playing this year, if at all. But you told me the Browns had a better Super Bowl odds in the town where Mo Green has no plaque, signpost, or name to honor his creation of the town. But you got to be kidding me. Joe Burrow is a top 1, tier 1 quarterback in the NFL.
Bengals are ahead of the Browns.
It's about time.
Yeah.
That's the way it should be, because they also hit the crap out of the offensive line in free agency. And they drafted well again, it seems.
Browns are ahead of the Raiders.
I don't know, man. I honestly don't understand how odds makers work, or if people are betting and that changes the odds, or, I don't understand.
Hey, you're trying to get action on both sides, Rich.
But so you might be like, so who's not in tier 1? Who's in tier 2, which is categorized as carry the team, but not as consistent as the tier 1 quarterback. And there's a hole or two in their game. And the number 1 quarterback in tier 2 is your defending Super Bowl champion, Matthew Stafford, with Russell Wilson right behind him. There's Deshaun Watson in front of Lamar, who's in front of Dak, TJ. And Derek Carr, Kyler Murray, and Matt Ryan. Those are your 8 quarterbacks in tier 2.
How is this described again? What was tier 2?
Tier 2 is they can carry the team, but they're not as consistent as a tier 1 quarterback, and there's a hole or two in their game.
I think that's fair for most of these guys, right?
Well, the issue is as well.
I mean, you could go down each one of those guys and point out a flaw
guess
that differentiates them from the tier 1 guys.
And here's the thing, too, that I saw, because the quotes in this, you got to read the article just to read some of the quotes from the unnamed people. I can't believe this is being said still right now. A current NFL defensive coordinator, quoted by Mike Sando on Lamar Jackson, says if he has to pass to win the game, they ain't winning the game. He's so unique as an athlete, and he's really a good football player, but I don't give an S if he wins the league MVP 12 times. I don't think he'll ever be a 1 as a quarterback. He'll be a 1 as a football player, but not a quarterback. What the hell does that mean? What the hell does that mean? A football player. Are there people still thinking that he can't throw? Are there still people who think maybe he's not as consistent a thrower as a tier 1 quarterback, but what does that mean that he's more of a football player? Does that mean he's a runner? Is that your way of saying he's a running back? What the F does that mean? So you have to take some of this stuff with a grain of salt. I mean, Lamar Jackson can beat you with his legs, and I know that he's runs, through the Bengals half the time before Joey Burrow arrived. But come on, man. He can throw it. Let's see who he can throw it to. What if Tyreek Hill showed up there? With all due respect to the people he's been throwing to. Hollywood Brown was his number 1 guy.
Hey, he's gone now.
Well, his number 1 guy's been his tight end all this time.
Period.
So he's never really had that big-time wide receiver.
And they have a running game, and that's the offense for a reason.
Yeah, that's how they play football.
I can't believe it. Tier 3
Rich, really, look, can I stop you? Really? You can't believe it?
I can believe it.
Yeah, come on, let's be honest. You can believe it.
It's
all right.
gobsmacked by it.
But he hasn't had to win the game with his arm. I guess that's why we haven't.
Well, I mean, we could point out, like, if you give me a minute to just actually look at stuff, win with his arm. Remember the 500 yards he had in the first game against Miami in his MVP season? And you were like, let's see him do it again. And then he wins the MVP. Come on now.
But he didn't have another game like that.
Come on now. Tier 3 is a legit starter, but needs a heavier run game or a defensive component to win the game. A lower volume of drop-back passing game offense suits him best.
We can guess who these guys are.
There's Kirk Cousins. Jimmy Garoppolo in front of Tannehill. Look at Tannehill in the middle of the pack. Mac Jones, Baker Mayfield, Jalen Hurts, Carson Wentz, Jared Goff, Trevor Lawrence, and Jameis are all in there.
Okay, so read that description again.
Okay. Legit starter.
Okay.
But the quarterback needs a heavier run game or a defensive component to win. Lower volume of a drop back passing game offense suits him best.
I don't know if Kirk belongs in that. Kirk's a really good passer. He had a great year last year.
They just don't think he's a tier 2. It's about time for Kirk to show himself in tier 2.
Well, yeah.
I kind of think a lot of these are
kind of spot on. Yeah.
I haven't really had a big issue with ones other than the fact that Stafford, I think, proved himself to be a tier 1 guy last year. There was a 3-week period where, the Rams
He led the
stumbled.
league in interceptions last year.
I don't know, man. Tier 4, unproven player or a veteran who ideally would not start all 17 games. This one's pretty harsh. Justin Fields, Tua. Davis Mills.
I mean, the guy started half a year.
I know. Zach Wilson, Trey Lance, Daniel Jones. How about Marcus Mariota sitting in there? Sam Darnold, 32.
Ooh.
Mitchell Trubisky, Drew Lock.
Daniel Jones at 30.
Unproven player or the fact that he's still unproven, I guess, and he's a veteran, I guess. He's entering his 5th year.
And the thing is, I look at the people.
Ideally would not start all 17 games. I would tell you this. It's ideal for all of these guys to start all 17 games with the exception, in my mind, of Mitchell Trubisky and Drew Lock. The problem is for Drew Lock is, for the Seahawks, is who's the guy.
They don't have anybody to replace him.
Who would be there to replace him. And he's the only one in tier 5, which is backup quarterback. Only one. There's only one player in tier 5 to finish it all up.
Is it Geno Smith?
It's Geno by himself.
Oh, come on.
And the reason why Mike Sando said is everybody knowing tier 5's a backup quarterback, they just said he's the backup. All of the evaluators say he's the backup. But, I mean, it would be a major problem. If you wouldn't mind putting up tier 4 one more time before we get to David A. Arnold in studio. It would be a major problem for me if Zach Wilson didn't start all 17 games, if Fields didn't start all 17 games, if Tua, name them all. Davis Mills, Trey Lance, Daniel Jones, they got to play all 17 games. They have to. for their team.
And that's kind of what I was thinking about. But in regards to Daniel Jones and his evaluation, like, who would you take him over that's ahead of him? Like, would you rather have...
you mean on the Giants
in
depth
the
chart?
tier 4, I'm just saying, would you rather have Davis Mills than Daniel Jones? But I
sure would.
I think you would take all those guys ahead of him, right?
I sure would right now.
Yeah.
Although
Wilson,
even John Mara, the Giants co-owner, said we haven't done him too much justice.
Do you think Daniel Jones...
let's see what Daboll looks like, but he has to start all 17 games this year.
Do you think Daniel Jones or Fields has a better year this year?
Daniel Jones. I like their weapons, and I like their coach. Let's see what they look like. Let's get Saquon healthy. Let's go.
Yeah.
But I don't think Sam Darnold has to start all 17 games for Carolina this year, and I don't think Trubisky has to start all 17 games.
But you don't think they will either.
I don't think they will.
Yeah.
Well, I think, as you know, it's Baker's gig in Carolina, and I think at some point, I hope for Trubisky that he makes the most of this opportunity. They got to see what they have and pick it. They didn't just draft a first-round quarterback all willy-nilly in Pittsburgh, where last time they did it was Big Ben.